This is my 1UZ FE, the power plant of my race car, and it has one major issue. It doesn't run. But today, that changes, because after 2 years of letting this engine sit around and collect dust, we're finally gonna let her stretch her legs and get it running for our first test drive. But there's one issue that's stopping us, and that's that I have no idea how to wire an engine. And if I mess this up, I could fry my ECU, or worse, burn the whole car down. So we have to get this right. Now, before we can start this thing, there's a lot that needs to happen. So I broke it down into 2 phases. Phase 1 is the bare minimum just to get it started. We need to run a fuel system, we need to hook the starter up, and most importantly, we need to wire the ECU. Without that, nothing is gonna happen.
Then, phase 2 is about keeping the engine alive for more than 10 seconds without it overheating, and to be able to hear some rev limiter. To do that, we need cooling, which means we'll need a radiator. Also, on top of that, to make sure we are in the clear to rev it out, we need a way to understand what the engine is doing. Something to monitor things like coolant temperature, oil pressure, and RPM.
Now, if you're new here, let me quickly catch you up to speed. My name is Marcus, and this is my custom race car, a mid-engine tube chassis build that I've been putting together in my garage over the last 2 years. Everything you see is designed and fabricated by myself.
Recently, we got it rolling for the first time ever, and now we're rapidly approaching its very first test drive. Getting the engine running is the next major step in the project, but honestly, my only experience with wiring is trying to untangle earbuds.
Bro, I just put these in.
So let's start off with the basics. The car battery. All cars need power to run, so I got a cheap battery from the junkyard for only $50 and placed it in the rough area we would need it, the front of the car. Looks like Marcus is mounting it right now. This guy can't be serious. Now you might wonder, why the front? Because the engine is in the back, it's already very rear heavy. Anything that I can move forward, I have to move forward. Batteries are super heavy and also super easy for me to relocate, especially at this point of the build. For the ground terminal, I have this old wire. It's red, so I used my professional painter skills to make it more obvious that it was the ground. I charge $300 an hour, don't lowball me. Just like in a normal car, we are gonna ground this straight to the chassis. I just use a sketchy clamp for now because like I said, the battery's gonna be moving around a little bit. For the positive, I'm using a clamp connector, and we will come back to add a wire to this soon. Before we can do that though, we need to figure out where all our electrical stuff is going to live. Ideally, we would put it in the front for weight balance, but for accessibility and the fact that I would probably cry if I had to run that many individual wires, we're gonna put it in the back. Now, honestly, this is about as far as my knowledge goes. I know a little bit about running wires,
but what purpose certain electronics serve, why you have to wire stuff a specific way, really anything past the absolute basics, I have no idea. So it was time to start research. I made this friend for my Instagram account, and he has a lot of experience doing automotive wiring. I was able to ask him all of my most important questions, and he was very happy to answer them.
After some research, I figured out what a proper circuit should look like. And it's actually really simple. Your system starts off with 2 parts. A power source, in our case a car battery, and the part we want to power. For this example, we'll use the fuel pump. Now if you were to hook these 2 up directly, the pump would turn on and you have a circuit. That'll probably burst into flames. There's 2 main problems with this. For one, you can't turn it off, so you'll just drain the battery.
Are you serious?
And second, there's no safety trigger. If for whatever reason your battery has a hiccup and sends a ton of power to your fuel pump, it'll kind of just explode. So we add a button or a switch to complete the circuit, as well as a fuse to prevent those catastrophic failures. Now this is almost fully legit, but we need one more thing, a relay.
Now maybe you already know what a relay does. I didn't, or at least I didn't know why you actually needed one in a proper setup. A relay, put very simply, is pretty much just an electrically controlled switch. Use a small, low power signal to open a much higher amperage circuit. When running something that needs a lot of voltage, instead of running a really thick wire up to your dash, you can just run a small wire to a relay, and that'll do the heavy lifting. It's kind of like a traffic light. The light doesn't move the cars, it just controls when they can go. The light in this case is our switch, and the cars are the heavy current flowing through the system. Now why not just use a switch to do that? When something, say for example the starter, needs to use power to turn on, you need a huge switch to not risk frying your wires. Not like that, dog. Also, running a relay allows you to use much smaller electrical wire throughout your build, which keeps the weight down as well as the cost.
And just like that, we have a single, fully legit electrical circuit. For all of the main systems on a car, it's just repeating this circuit a few more times for every individual component. With our newfound knowledge of wiring, it's time to tackle the real thing and wire up the actual system. So let's put this all together. We already have the battery mounted. Let's move to our next piece, the switch panel.
This is the switch panel that I made. It's very simple. There's 4 buttons on it. We have start, power, and fuel. Fans is, it's not even the right button. To explain how this is wired, it's actually really simple. Now these buttons are a little bit more complex because they have ring lights around them for when you press them. So they're actually a 5-wire system right here. Your power comes in at white, and then when you press the button, it loops it through to yellow. Then right at the base of yellow, you can see there's a little red. When you press the button, that power is gonna run through here, and it's gonna run to whatever you have it hooked up to, but it's also going to power your light. If you're building any car and there's not zip ties on it, you're doing something wrong. So we're just gonna zip tie this panel straight to here. Beautiful.
Now that we have our switch panel mounted, we just need 2 wires to power it, a positive and a negative to the ground, which activates our whole panel. Because the LEDs are piggybacking off of the output of the buttons, when we press the button, it completes the circuit and all the buttons light up.
Let's check. We should have power. These should light up. Cool.
So now the last 2 things we need are the relays and the fuses. I found this relay block on Amazon that has 6 relays built in and also has individual fuse power to each relay, which checks both of those boxes.
Eventually, this car's gonna have a firewall right here. So this is kind of where I wanna set up my electricity. So I'll end up placing our relay block somewhere around here. This also happens to be right where the ECU reaches to, so it's kind of the perfect place to put it.
I just put this piece of cardboard down to hold everything in the general area, but we will mount this all properly in a little bit. Because the electrical is in the back, we need to run a main power line to the distribution area.
Now for that main power line, you need something thick. I was gonna run something like this. This is 6 gauge, I believe. But you need something way bigger. That cable isn't just running all your electronics, it's running your starter, it's running your alternator, all that stuff. If you have too thin of a gauge, you might catch something on fire.
I used this 2 gauge welding wire, mainly because it's super flexible and was also very cheap. I made sure to run it through the center of the car to avoid it getting damaged. And with an eyelet and a bolt, I created my power hub. Now we need to run the output from the switches. We're going to start off by running the starter line. I cut the wires with quite a bit of slack just in case I choose to relocate it.
This is gonna be our starter relay. We're gonna hook up to our start button out and then to our relay in the back, and then we're done.
I chose black because that's the original color of the starter solenoid wire. Now we just need to do that 2 more times for our fuel and our ignition, and then ground out the relay block.
So for now, I will just tape this to our chassis. All right, so this is all wired up. There's power running to it. So we're gonna press the button and I'll put the microphone over here. So all of our relays are clicking now. So now it's time to run the outputs from our relays to the parts of the car that needs to go to. The fuel pump, the ECU, and the starter. Now before we can just go connecting stuff to the engine, let me explain exactly what we need to do. This is a 1UZ FE. It's a 2nd gen motor out of a 1996 LS400. As you can see, we already have the ECU and the engine side harness. We also have what used to be the body plug on the original car, which means all the wires that we need to tap into are here. These motors are daunting, especially considering just how many wires are in this harness. But once you start reading through diagrams, these things become some of the easiest engines to wire up. Pretty much every sensor is on the ECU harness, meaning you just need to send power to a couple things and these will run just fine.
There are a total of 6 wires that we need to tap into. 3 on the harness, 3 on the ECU body plug. On the harness, there's a thick black wire for the starter solenoid, a black and red wire that powers the injectors and the igniters, and a brown one that's just the ground. On the ECU side, there's a black and yellow wire that is constant power for the ECU's memory, a white wire that is for the EFI relay, and a black and orange wire that is the ignition switch. Beginning on the body plug side, the starter cable has its own relay, so we'll just twist these 2 together and we'll test it out.
You're not gonna hear the relay click, you'll just hear the starter move, so let's try that out. I just nuked the fuse. It turns out I got ahead of myself and I forgot to actually hook up the main power to the starter. So let's do that.
That obviously did not go to plan, so I ran a 4 gauge wire down from our power hub into the starter's cable, and then when I tried again, it worked just fine.
All right, now that we fixed that, I should be able to press this start button and it should crank the car over. So let's give it a shot. Awesome.
Now to tackle the ECU wires, I twisted the EFI relay, ignition switch, and the injector power supply together. These will be hooked up from a relay so that I can turn the entire car off instantly with the click of the button. For all of these connections, I'm just twisting and taping them for now, but once I know it works, I'll be finalizing it by crimping. When it comes to automotive wiring, you should never solder because it can make connections brittle and they can snap through vibrations. Of course, I learned this after I'd already soldered my button plate together, but I don't really want to redo it, so we're going to call it a test. And funny enough, that's pretty much the entirety of the wiring that's actually needed now. I'll add a new fuse box for constant power to the ECU, and then we just need to ground the brown plug from the body harness. So the engine is all wired, which means technically we can start it. We just need gas. Now you may have noticed on the roof of the car, there's a Clorox wipes container.
That is my fuel pump. It is so ghetto. As you can probably assume, this is not gonna be the final fuel pump. I know, shocker, right?
Now I'm not really going to get into explaining that because it's literally just a pump in a plastic container and is so ghetto that you should not be copying it. Now that the engine is fully wired up and we have fuel, that means we have all of our essentials. The last thing we gotta do is quickly attach our exhaust manifolds. Without these, the ECU won't have O2 readings. I had to chop them up a little bit because the original bell housing was smaller than my adapter plate and it was in the way, but after that it bolted right on. Unsurprisingly, I lost a few studs over the last few years, so I got some from Canadian Tire and got the manifolds mounted. So now phase 1 is complete, which means it's just time to test our buttons out and see if we can get this car started up.
All right, this is gonna be the first attempt at a start. It's probably not gonna start right off the bat because the ECU has absolutely no idea what it's doing.
Let's fire it up.
But let's just go, let's go for it, let's go for it. Fuel, power, start. That sounds nice.
I saw sparks shoot up the exhaust.
Second attempt. That sounds loud.
Dude, it's shooting flames, man.
All right, now you guys can see the fire shooting out the back. Let's give it another shot.
Oh, it's learning.
It's learning. She's getting there, man. She wants to go. Oh, it smells so bad. Dude, it's so much louder with the manifolds on.
Smells good.
I don't know how you're standing back there. Holy Jesus, I can't hear anything.
Really? I think I might be going deaf.
It's that blue collar life, man.
Blue collar light.
So it runs. It took a while to start because the ECU has to do some learning, but it runs. However, we can't run it for very long, which means it's time to go onto phase 2. Step 1 is getting the radiator hooked up and doing all the hard lines.
Now you've probably been seeing this radiator throughout the video, but this isn't the one we're going to be using. My friend had this one laying around from one of his previous cars, and I was just going to use it for a test run, but it ended up having a hole in it for very unknown reasons.
Oh! Is the engine okay? Oh, the engine's fine. There's water or something.
So I just decided to go for the proper front mount radiator.
In my setup, the radiator is going to be front mounted, which is how you normally do it in every car. The difference is my engine's in the back. Now, what that means is the coolant has to get from the back of the car to the front. In normal setups, your radiator hose is like maybe 2 feet long, but in our scenario, it's got to get about 6 foot up to the front of the car. So I've purchased a few items. Let me show you what they are. Oh, that's so loud. First off, we have our hard lines. These are gonna be the tubes that run the coolant along the side of the car. And then secondly, I have a lot of soft line. This is just rubber tubing, and this will get from our ports on the engine to our hard lines, and then from our hard lines to the radiator. The soft line is gonna be coming out of our engine ports here, and it's gonna come down to here by the door bar, where it'll run through that aluminum tube that goes along the body to the front. As you can tell right here though, there's a bend in the chassis. And if I just try to run this straight, it's gonna end up right in our suspension. So what we have to do is I have to bend this tube so that it can run along the body, bend at this point, and then go to the front.
I quickly set up my tube bender and got these two shaped up and then mounted them in the rough area they would be on the car. Because these are going to be coming off pretty soon for chassis work, I just opted to use stainless steel zip ties to mount them.
It has come to my attention, I have actually not a clue on how these work. I thought they would just zip tie like normal. Okay, let me find some instructions.
Stainless steel locking ties are perfect for securing wrap.
Ow! Genuinely, what in the world is going on? These ones just work completely fine. Bro, I'm over here thinking I'm a complete idiot, and this stupid zip tie were just defective. They were just missing the piece inside them. All right, we've got 2 coolant tubes routed.
Now it was just time for some rubber lines. These are Continental ContiTech hose. It was $12 cheaper per foot than actual rad hose, and it's pink, so that's cool, right? Anyways, I just had to trim some of the aluminum hard lines down and then cut the rubber to shape. It went super smooth, and surprisingly, there were no kinks in the line at all. Then I placed the radiator roughly where it's supposed to live, attached the front 2 lines, and then strapped it to the cage.
It is ghetto right now, and it is gonna stay ghetto for a little bit. I do have a TIG welder on its way, and I've never used a TIG welder before, but I'm gonna learn to weld and do an aluminum cage for the front here, just to hold that, the battery, all that stuff. That way it's nice and light. It's not gotta be super structural, it's just holding a little bit of water. And yeah, it's time to start filling this thing with coolant, so that's a little scary, but let's get into it. Now, because there's gonna be so much coolant in this car, I just went with a concentrate because that way, it's just way cheaper, honestly. Oh my God, it's in my eye. Oh, that's really not good. All right, see you in a bit. That was not good. Anyway, back to what we were doing. So the last thing to do now is to add our coolant fill port. Now you might be wondering why am I putting this little filler neck in? Now, the 1UZ actually has a bleed port for coolant on it, and my radiator is gonna be really low, so I shouldn't have to worry about bleeding it, right? And that is fully true. However, the problem is the radiator doesn't have a coolant cap and there's no way to bleed pressure back here. So when your system gets up to temperature, that pressure is gonna have nowhere to go and either blow out some sort of seal or blow up a tube. Now, normally you have a radiator that has this kind of cap built in that has the pressure release, but my radiator that I'm getting is off of a BMW E36, My engine had the cap in some sort of weird bleed box. We're not doing that, we're doing it the simple way. Anyway, I have to figure out where to put this, and the best area to put it, in my opinion, is right off the thermostat side through the tube, and they'll go there.
So we quickly threw that into the line and then hose clamped all of our attachment points, and it was time to start filling it with coolant.
All right, so we now have all of our clamps on, but yeah, it's just time to start. It's really scary. I don't want it to piss all over the place, but only one way to find out. We'll do 4 liters at a time, slowly fill it and see what happens. Oh, it's pissing out the hole. Whoa, it's puking out here. Wow, we're actually like possibly full? I actually don't believe that. This bolt right here is the coolant bleed port for the 1UZ. So I'm gonna crack that bolt and we're gonna see if there's coolant filling up there. Oh, holy Jesus, that was tight, man. Okay, we will start topping up. Our fill plug area should start to fill up. Yep, I should almost put the rad cap on. Oh, I should put the rad cap on right now. Okay.
Now that we got our cooling system finished up, there's 2 things left to do. For one, we're gonna clean up this mess of electrical wiring in the back. I made a small wood board to screw everything into and then mounted that between the frame. After screwing all the pieces to the board and double checking everything was done correctly, we were onto the final piece of the puzzle, which is being able to understand what the engine is actually feeling. That means knowing what temperature the coolant's at, if there's oil pressure, and what RPM it's hitting. Now, in order to do this, I contracted my friend to help me build something to read the engine sensors. And this is what he came up with.
This is the little gauge board I soldered up for his car. There's a little microcontroller that reads the sensor inputs, just divides them down to the voltage the microcontroller needs with some resistors, and then displays it on a little screen. I didn't code this at all. Claude told me how to do it and wire it up as well, but it kind of works. This is actually version 2, because on version 1, he plugged the 12-volt wire into the wrong one and it fried it.
Yeah, I literally had to plug in 3 wires and I somehow messed it up. Pretty much all this does is taps into some of the sensors. We wired it to the oil pressure sensor, the pulse out for the tachometer, and then also the gauge cluster temperature sensor. Then we quickly verified to make sure that the temperature sensor worked.
All right, so the temperature sensor is up in here, and our gauge cluster, to make sure it's actually changing, all we're gonna do is point this heat gun into the general direction of it, and we're gonna see if it warms up. So I'll start blowing right now. Anything? What's it at?
6, 8, 11.
All right, that's a good sign. You gotta hold it.
Okay, that might be a little off.
It might be a little off.
Now, after a little bit of calibration, we got it working. We can finally get this thing started up for real, let it warm up, and take her to the limiter safely. Let's do it.
Oh, possibly. Oh my God, that was so deafening revving it.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ, that got like probably 5 times louder. Oh.
Now, unfortunately, the main camera died, but I got a video of the red line on my phone, and here it is. So after a few days of working on this, we managed to bring it from just an engine in the back of the cage to a full running car. In the next video, we're gonna get the gas tank made so that we're not running the most sketchy gas tank ever. After that, we'll get it actually driving. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. If you have any questions about the car, drop them below and I will try my best to answer every single one of you guys. For now though, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the support and have a good rest of your day.